I didn't hear you, Alan. Okay.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call for a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of November 23rd, 2021.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Public forum for this evening? No one. Presentations? We have Tony Franza and Stephanie Baxter to talk about the senior class trip. Tony?
Your little color.
Is Mr. Parisi on? Is Mr. Parisi? Is what?
Oh, is it? Oh. The man from the travel company is on. Did he get invited to this? No, that's one.
He was invited to you. I thought you did that.
No, Vince did it. Let me just see. That's good enough.
Who's logged in? This is logged in.
You can wait. I just need his email. Invite him.
Are you logged in? Because if you are, you can invite him.
He's not on this one.
Because Stephanie was in the meeting. But we invited Vince.
So Lisa, I'm going to have Tony start while you try to figure that out.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm Tony Franza and my co-advisor, Stephanie Baxter. We are here to present the class of 2022, hopefully happening senior trip. A few weeks ago, the class voted on two possibilities. One was Cleveland, Ohio, and the other one was for Williamsburg, Virginia. The class ended up voting for Cleveland, Ohio. And so we met, Ms. Baxter and myself, we met with Superintendent Wiles, Mr. Pavone, and who were trying to get logged into for a Google meeting to answer any of your questions with the obvious questions that are going to come up. Mr. Anthony Parisi from the travel group, He's presented a package, which I believe you all have in your board packet. Is he in? Oh, fabulous. Good evening, Mr. Parisi. So I'm not going to read for you what you've hopefully read already, so I'm going to let you just ask your questions.
Board members' question on the senior class trip. Lisa?
I have two questions that initially come to mind. How many students do you expect to be going?
So when the vote took place, we had approximately 35-ish, but I can tell you not all seniors took advantage of voting. Sorry. Not all the seniors took advantage of voting. So I'm hopeful for more than that, but about 34 to 38 seniors did vote.
Thank you. And, I think my primary question is what happens if a student is sick with COVID and any illness, but most especially if you do get a COVID diagnosis while you're gone, that would interfere with that student's ability to ride back on a bus with you, or if there are additional quarantines as a result of that. What is the plan for that possibility?
I think, Tony, just to put it encapsulate it is, just give us the safety protocols are going to be followed for COVID. In the event COVID does happen and somebody gets COVID, what are your plans and what safety protocols are we putting in place?
Well, I can speak of prior to this evening when we met with Superintendent Wiles and Mr. Pabon, that the expectation is that whatever our school rules are, they will be followed in Cleveland, even though their mandates are not anywhere near what we have here. Mr. Parisi, are you able to hear us?
I didn't get that he tried to, I invited him.
You might have to let him in, Lisa.
I'm going to let Mr. Parisi speak of the whole, what will occur if this occurs during the trip. I know that if they test positive prior, obviously they're not going to attend. But he also has answers to what happens at that.
Yeah, like how do you get that kid home?
Correct.
Hold on one second, Jody. Hold your question for a minute. Thank you.
So the travel agent can go over more about like the safety procedure, but when we met with Lisa and Carl, he also had said that they had planned for an additional number of rooms to be utilized for quarantine process. So that student would have to go into that quarantine room. We would make the adjustments, and then one of the staff members that would be on the trip would be designated to be the person that would have to be staying there with that student. That would have to stay like separate. If the student had to stay after the trip, say they had to wait for their parent to come get them, then we'd have to have a staff member that would stay until the parent arrived.
So prior to
But at what expense? Like how? Like that
Well,
extra room is folded into the cost.
Into the
of trip?
cost, yeah.
prior to the trip, I know a lot of airlines and you hear about the trips that you go. I know before I go to Puerto Rico, usually I have to get tested 3 days before. Or is that what you guys plan on doing, is having the students tested 3 days before?
I think we are going to do whatever you all ask of us.
Okay.
Okay.
It does, Phil,
Jody?
it does state in here that they may require testing prior, and that was my question. Who is doing the testing, and if there's any fees that occur, who is going to be doing that? It says on page 4, COVID testing may be required before your group begins their travel experience. So that we'd have to know who's doing the testing, because it says at our expense, not at their expense.
Okay.
So is that something we would be doing through Ulster County? And then are we doing the protection plan with it?
So,
Because if they test positive, they will give a refund if we can.
to the best of their ability, it is their job from what Mr. Parisi has, and he'll explain it when he
Okay.
eventually gets in. It is their job to get the money back. It will depend on for instance, if it happens during the trip after a day of being there, it depends on what has been paid for at that point. So, for example, the Cedar Point is, I believe, one of the last, I think it's in the beginning, I'm not quite positive. But if he goes to the park and goes up as he's getting from, entering all the kids into the park, if he says, listen, I've got 3 kids who tested positive, they can't go, can we get a refund? It's really going to be up to the park. It's not really within.
But prior to the trip taking place, if somebody tests positive, did I read correctly that they will get a refund?
I want to say this is where it gets foggy for me, because as the superintendent understands, even when I sat in the meeting, I misunderstood. I heard things differently than.
I think on page 12,
More than I do.
in the dark highlighted area, I think it says more than 72 hours prior to travel, 1 or more individuals in the group
I think,
to secure a full refund.
if I could, I think that
They will work.
we need to wait for the
secure a
travel
COVID
agent, because this is
It
Okay.
would be
their
best. He understands it
COVID
a
policies.
whole lot better than I do.
We invited him 3 times to the meet, and I don't know why we can't get him on.
Okay.
We could bring it back January.
So we want to have the travel agent present, and I think it's an integral part of Tony's
It is because
presentation.
of COVID.
So I'm going to
I am
ask
very
the
foggy on
senior
this.
class advisors if you would mind coming back at the first meeting in January.
Can I just make a request before you
Yes.
from that? When you come back, if you're coming back, there does need to be a plan in place if somebody gets sick.
So I
That's
do
always been a
believe-
concern of ours, but now even more so. So maybe if you and maybe the superintendent, whoever works that plan out, can prepare that for us before you come back the next time, so we will have those questions answered. I have the feeling that's going to be a big focus of this.
So from our last meeting, Mr. Pabon, Mrs. Baxter, and myself, we sat down, we talked about the if this, then that
Right.
scenarios that we know we need to come up with. Also, the hope is that, by May,
Yeah.
let's look where we were at last year.
Right.
It was this time of the year where it was very scary, it was very sketchy in a lot of things, but yet we pulled off sports.
Yeah.
We pulled off sports. So,
Sure. So do you mind coming back?
I
when
don't
you-
mind coming
when
back
he
at
could be
all.
present?
we're not letting him in.
I couldn't see where I could click, come in.
All right, we'll give this another minute or so.
Alan, I'm wondering, because Vince created the meet, if he has to let them in.
Is there any hope there, Alan?
So Mr. Parisi can speak off of, like you said earlier.
Oh, Kenny?
He can.
Can we do a little test of that? See if, put
So you work your phone.
them up against the mic?
All right, so Mr. Parisi, we have a couple questions already about the COVID protocols and stuff.
And refunds.
And refunds.
Possible refunds.
So what would the first question you guys like to ask?
What happens if a kid gets sick while in Cleveland? How does that child get home, and at whose expense?
Okay, so they were wondering if a child does test positive while they're in Cleveland or they show symptoms, how does that process work as far as, who would take that expense on and how would we work that protocol?
And how does the kid get home?
And how would they get home?
The first thing we would do, obviously, is separate them, quarantine them, and we would do that by either moving students around within the rooms that we currently have, or getting another room for that person. We would take on that initial expense, and then it would go in through the insurance company to pay us back for that room. Or if we need to do anything else, that would be completely on us. We would take care of that for you. As far as we would keep that student quarantined by themselves, obviously we would need to choose a chaperone to stay with them, not in the room, obviously, but, in the hotel with them, to make sure that, they're safe, they're okay. Of course, we would immediately get a hold of parents. Parents are going to be your number one of how they would like to handle it as well. Many times you'll probably see that the parent's going to hop in the car and come get the student right away. But there is trip insurance that is provided with that, which would also quote unquote repatriate the person, so would pay for travel home. But let's hope it wouldn't get to that, obviously.
So I don't understand though. If a parent can't hop in a car and drive to Cleveland, how does the student
Lisa,
get
can you
back?
speak into your mic?
If a parent is unable to hop in a car and drive to Cleveland, how does the student get home? And how does the staff member get home?
Because they shouldn't be driving together.
Well, I mean, that's something we'd have to take on a case-by-case basis. We honestly, something like that, we can't, number one is obviously going to be your parent. If we need to provide for a flight home later on, for the student and the staff member, depending on how long they're going to be there, or a rental car or something like that, that's something that insurance would take a look and kick in. It's something we're going to assist with, but that seems it's a very specific concern that I think number one is going to be your parent contact. So the parent is going to lead us into that as well and tell us how they would like it handled, because they don't want to send their child alone on an airplane or a whole bus or anything like that.
Well, and a sick child probably can't do that. And also, there's a staff member that's been stranded in Cleveland. And I understand that this is a specific query, but I think it's also something that is very much in the realm of possibility. We're all very optimistic that this is all going to be gone by May and things will be great, but I think you also have people traveling together on a bus and in hotel rooms and sharing hotel rooms. Somebody getting a positive diagnosis is not a big long shot in my mind.
But just please be aware that before entering this trip, any chaperone is going to be fully aware of the possibilities, and we are asking for one of them to be aware that they should volunteer for it. So if there's a chaperone left behind, it's because they volunteer to be that person to stay behind if that situation occurs.
So that chaperone might have to go find her own car rental and drive herself
No,
back? Or,
No.
I just want to know. I just
So
want to
the
know what
superintendent-
the plan is.
It was just,
So the superintendent has advised me that the district will be responsible to get that staff.
So in the past, when we've had a situation happen, the district had to provide the transportation for the chaperone back. So the district would be responsible for that. And if the district employee had to stay a period of time, we would be responsible for that. The parent, which will be included in the contract, is responsible to meeting their child under any kind of circumstances where there's an emergency like that. All of that has to be specifically laid out, as the gentleman said earlier, in the contract. So parents know exactly what the expectation is. If somebody gets sick, you're responsible to, get to Cleveland. And if the parent cannot get to Cleveland, we have transported the child back. But it has to be specifically clear, and the parent has to sign off that they understand their responsibility to come to their child. Look, if a child's sick, there's medical decisions that have to be made. We can do that temporarily, but the parent has to be there. And that might be that parents might take that into consideration on what their decisions are. But we would be responsible for any of the chaperones who volunteer to stay for the cost of them staying and returning.
So Jody and then Geneva.
So he's talking about trip insurance. Is that an additional trip insurance that we'd be purchasing, or is that part of the package?
Anthony, would that be additional trip insurance, or is that part of the package?
The post-departure is the one that I wanted to discuss real quick, and that includes any sort of trip interruption. A sickness like that would be considered a trip interruption. So as you guys are saying that the district would be, charged with getting the staff member back, that might be true initially, but you may be reimbursed for it by the post-departure trip insurance. With that, the post-departure trip insurance has been purchased on your behalf for the trip. So that is something that is included. The standard additional trip insurance is something the parents would have to purchase specifically. That is personal choice whether they provide it or not.
And we're leaving that up to our parents if they want to provide that additional insurance?
Yes.
One other question, are we going to, as a district, mandate before these students get on the bus 24, 48 hours to be COVID tested?
We could. You know, we don't have mandated testing right now, but I suspect that this week there's some new regulations coming out with regard to test to stay.
Yep.
We'll have the ability to do that, but we can check. I think we can mandate it on a trip to be tested to go.
I'm just wondering how we, we really have to discuss this as a district about the testing. If we're having 4 students staying in a room together, that's something that we're having 4 different families now being combined. If we have a child that does come down sick, I don't think we should be moving students from one room to another. Anybody who was in that room then would have to be quarantined possibly. Unless they're vaccinated, right. And then we would just have to get possibly another room if it's available.
The person who's sick will have.
Right. Well, they said either get a new room or just move students around, and I don't think we should be at that point
Well, it's going to
moving them
depend on the
around.
availability of that hotel at the time.
Exactly.
So that's also something that we're going to take into consideration. It could be a possibility that it's a different hotel we have to find. But that's what Mr. Parisi's job will be as attending.
Okay.
Meaning that it's something as similar as I will have a room with you guys. If I need to give up my room for that student to go into my room to quarantine and I go find another hotel, that is exactly what will happen. So the student comes first.
Thank you.
Geneva.
So I just, we keep talking about one student and like one family and things like that, but I feel like the likelihood with, people traveling together and staying in the same room and being on a senior trip, literally to spend time together, is that if one person is exposed, there are going to be multiple students exposed. And so does the insurance, is there a limit, say all 30 students, are all together and all get exposed? Is there a limit on what the insurance is willing to cover or how that works?
I'm sorry, I can barely hear the question there.
So the question was, is there a limit on the insurance? The kids are going to be spending a lot of time together. So if all 30 that attend end up getting exposed, is there going to be a limit to the amount that they'll reimburse?
They will each have their own policy, so it's going to be per person policy. But if if we're laid up for 3 days or 3 extra days, I would see that as, what they're going to handle basically for us. But, if we're up for 14 days, which I don't see happening for the entire group, we would have to go through the testing and stuff like that after 2 or 3 days. Those who test positive would be able to go home without a problem. But each person has their own policy that covers them.
So, Mr. Parisi, every state has their own rules as far as what happens in the event of exposure, and every county has different set of guidelines that they go by. As far as New York State goes, that we have one set of guidelines. I could tell you that most recently we had a training, 24 people were in the room. One vaccinated person came down with COVID. I had to quarantine 6 unvaccinated officers. So I'm wondering if you know what the rules are for for Ohio.
I can certainly find out what they are currently. Obviously, that is probably going to change. It's a ever moving target with that. I can find that out for us, what it is currently. I know one of the reasons why we did do the Ohio stuff is they do not require the vaccines for getting into their stuff. I don't know what they do for quarantine and that, but I will certainly find out.
I was just advised that we have to follow New York State rules and guidance, our district does.
Correct.
So if that's
Correct.
the case.
I believe actually the way that we've been other trips is that a lot of schools are going by whichever is stricter, if that makes more sense.
So if that's the case,
So
and we have 35 students going, and just for sake of argument, half of them are unvaccinated and there's one exposure, we potentially could have a lot of students quarantined for an exceptional amount of time.
Unless there's a test to stay.
Right, which would be a
Correct.
test out.
Is that where they can test out of quarantine, but we don't have that yet.
Right.
So let me ask this, please. So Mr. Napoli's been putting out a lot of COVID information, the testing kits and everything. So we know we're going to have a nurse attend this trip. So is there the possibility of having some of these kits sent with the nurse, since the nurse would be able to
Should.
do the testing?
I think depending upon, I think that's a very good possibility. And we'll have to work with our local Department of Health on that, because the nurses have to fall under a licensed authority. And in this case, it's the Ulster County Department of Health. So we'd have to get their express permission for
From
them to do
Cleveland.
that.
From Cleveland, the state.
Excuse me?
The state would, because obviously our nurses are not,
Ulster County Department of Health.
no, what I'm saying is, so if our nurses are traveling, we're no longer in New York State, but we follow because we're going on a trip?
Yes.
Okay.
And their license is a New York State license, and they're governed by those rules. But we'll clarify that with the school attorney.
Mr. Story.
Mr. Parisi, how many trips have you taken with students in the past 6 months?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat it?
How many trips have you taken with students in the past 6 months?
Probably about 8 in the last 6 months. Many of our students have come here to Orlando, where we are located, and we have had, we had 3 exposures, and that was last July. It was one of the very first trips that traveled with us after we kind of opened back up.
Thank you.
Jody.
So I see on page 12, it says if cancellation, the result of positive COVID tests 72 hours prior, that you will do your best to get a refund.
Correct. So what that basically means is we are going to do our best to speak to the different vendors that we have, like Cedar Point and any of the restaurants or anything like that. At that point, within that 72 hours, actually within usually about 45 days, we no longer have the money. The money is not in our house, so we've given it to each one of the vendors to buy their tickets. So for an example, if we get there and somebody has tested positive and I can return a Cedar Point ticket, well, of course, that money is going to go right back to you. And so that's why we kind of, we're going to do everything we can. Basically, if they're going to give us the money back, we're going to give it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Parisi. I also want to agree with Tony Franza here. This trip is, we're hopeful that as things go forward, I mean, unfortunately for both of you, we're talking about a trip in what has become now the height of the current pandemic. So obviously these worries and concerns are here for today. But as we go forward, the trip is not until May. We hope that, and what you said earlier, Tony, is that we hope the numbers go to where they were, downslide in May, and we're all fine and everybody goes and has a great time. Unfortunately, I think we have to prepare for the worst.
Absolutely.
And hope for the best, but I'm with you guys. I hope that we see the decline and we see us coming out of that slide, that curve. So just, Mr. Parisi, this is just making sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's for events that happen, It's
Totally understand.
It's as
we're
Tony
doing this
Franza
with a
said,
lot of
it's if
groups
this, then
where we
that.
have to meet with everybody, and we're understanding.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm positive you guys are doing all your best on this. Any more questions? Lisa?
Are there specific dates yet, or no?
May 8th to May 11th.
Correct.
Is that Mother's Day weekend?
Wayne?
I don't see a resolution for this on our agenda.
Yeah.
Or did I not refresh?
It's under the presentation.
There is no resolution.
That's
There
a
is no
that's a
resolution.
presentation, that's not a resolution.
Yeah, but if you look, for the there's a recommended action there.
Okay.
Yes, there is. There is a resolution, Wayne, under 4.1, under recommended action. Any, yeah, there
Okay, I
is.
see it.
It's right there under recommended
Yeah,
action.
yeah.
Any further questions for Ms. Franz and Ms. Baxter? Iris?
I just wonder if, I would imagine on the website, the insurance policy is available to review? Or both their insurance policy, what they're going to cover, and if parents want to buy extra insurance?
It's in the packet, Iris.
So I believe, when we come back from break, we are going to schedule an evening for a mandatory parent meeting of those who are going to attend the trip. And I do believe Mr. Parisi is going to have a breakdown for us. He's kind of dummied it down, and then he's going to refer to anybody who's really not understanding to the big picture of it. It's really going to be on the parents and to read and fully understand, if not understanding after our presentation.
So as a board member, I'd like to understand it too, and I'm not going to be at the parent meeting. So is there any way that,
You want a copy of the
I think we should take a look at it, yeah. Thank you.
So from my perspective, you know, these, we've had a couple of tough years here. Our children has endured a lot of suffering, both educationally and socially and emotionally. You know, while we're at a tough time right now in this pandemic, we hope to be going forward with some brighter days ahead. In that vein, I would like to see us give these kids something to look forward to work towards, and I would like to see this board approve this resolution. So in that same manner, I'll entertain anybody that wants to make a motion.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays to you.
Mr. Parisi, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll speak to you soon.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. Just one thing on behalf of myself, I just want to say thank you to Mary Bordiello for coming aboard as an intern and our interim athletic director, really tackling a lot of issues that we had and cleaning up a lot of things here as we move forward in these uncertain times, rather. She came up here at a moment's notice from the state of Florida, where her residence is, and worked for this district and worked very hard. So, and I know her time is limited here going forward, but we certainly want to recognize her and thank her for the job that she's done and wish her well as her time draws closer to ending with us. But it's certainly been a pleasure to have her back here once again. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the board to Mrs. Bordiello for a great job. And I want to wish everybody a happy and healthy couple of holidays coming up, and we hope that wherever you go and whatever your plans are, that you stay safe and you enjoy, and please be happy and be thankful to be sharing every day with your family members and whoever else you choose to spend the holidays with. And I want to say that to my fellow board members as well. So happy holidays. Going forward, board membership. Wayne?
So yeah, really quick, just a couple of things. Just want to thank, as we're giving thanks here, Dr. and Mrs. Kraft, Richard and Dale Kraft, for, you know, unfortunately the community lost, you know, people that have gone above and beyond, you know, in the community and given a lot to the school as well. You know, our music department would not be what it is without their support, and the alumni association, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, they're going to be severely lost in the community and the school. So I want to mention that. I would also like to ask the superintendent if we can get some information on vape sensors for our bathrooms. Other schools are doing it. Unfortunately, there's an issue with students vaping in bathrooms, and I would like to see us take the initiative, spend a few dollars, and put sensors in our bathrooms. They're working in other schools, and it's deterring students from vaping in our schools. Vaping is extremely dangerous, and it's happening way too often. And the last thing I have is taxable items for fundraising. I would like a list of taxable items for fundraising. I don't think we're being consistent with it, and I would like to read it over. And happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, Wayne. I'd also like to echo Wayne's sentiments. My condolences go out to J.B. Gillette and his wife Linda Gillette, our longtime music teacher, and certainly a loss for the community, and they did a lot for our music program. So on that same tone, I'm going to adjourn this meeting in their memory. So, other board members? Iris?
I just wanted to mention that we got the principals' reports in the newsletters, and I really appreciate having that in our pack to really keep up with the, the day-to-day events and things that are going on. I liked having that. I hope we'll continue that.
Definitely, once a month.
Okay. Any other board members? Superintendent Wiles.
One thing I do want to add with regard to Dr. and Mrs. Kraft, a huge loss. But they are the founders of the Ellenville Alumni Association, which is a really integral organization here that they, along with that organization, took the lead to raise money when we were in, dire straits years ago. And I know that there's committed people that they've worked with that will make sure that the Alumni Association stays active. But as everyone said, a huge loss for all of us. Two quick things. Vince is not here this evening, but in his report, he included an update on the capital project. We have submitted our projects. One of them has been at SED for a few weeks. We've been asked, a couple of months. We've been asked to provide additional information, which we have. We're still waiting for approval. We're hoping that comes sometime in January, but they're really backlogged. I think they have 2 or 3 project managers working up there for a multiple number of projects. I'm hoping that we do get that approval January, February. Much later than that, it's going to be really hard to turn around bid documents for construction this summer. That being said, Vince is working with the construction manager and the architect to come up with a plan to still put a shovel in the ground and get that cafeteria moving, even if it's at the end of the summer, and doing work during the school year on the outside that wouldn't disrupt the building, second shift if possible. So we're looking at all alternatives. Worst case scenario, we'll have to push it back, but we're waiting for approval. I know that there's been some questions about that. But he does have the phasing and the scope of work by building included in his report. The second thing, later this afternoon, we were advised that the New York State Education Department has canceled January Regents. We'll be pushing out, the high school will be pushing out some additional information on really what the impact of that is to, the students. They canceled the Regents. The reason that they included in their letter was the uptick of COVID and some other things. We'll make sure that we upload that memo to you, but there will be no January Regents. So those are the 2 things I have, and really a very happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year to all of you. And thank you for everything you do for the kids here.
Thank you, Superintendent, and also please wish on behalf of the Board of Education to your staff a very safe holiday season and happy holidays as well. And thank you for all you and your staff too. All right, I will entertain a consent agenda motion for this evening. Been moved? Seconded? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back in January, please enjoy your break, but when we come back in January, be ready to work because this is our upcoming busy season. Normally meetings every Tuesday going forward in January with our budget preparation, and also with some other things we have on the burner as well. So our next meeting is scheduled for January 4th. Please mark that on your calendars and be ready to sharpen those pencils and get to work in January. Other than that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? We're adjourned.